2 weekend games, but only one weekend goal. On today's Locked On Predators, we're going to recap the weekend's back-to-backs with our one word and wrestle with that one issue that has plagued the team all season long. Why can't the Nashville Predators score some goals?
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Monday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and, of course, our everydayers who tune in each and every Monday through Friday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, Emma, we knew it was going to happen. The Nashville Predators win streak, it came to a screeching halt, and we warned you it was going to maybe be against the Anaheim Ducks. Spoiler alert, it was. They lost to the Anaheim Ducks and then lost in overtime to the LA Kings. On today's show, we're going to recap the weekend's back-to-back performances. We're going to dive into what went wrong, but we also want to talk about something that went right that we haven't said a lot of positive things about this season. We also have to tackle the issue that is plaguing this Nashville Predators team, an issue we did not see coming in the offseason. This team, Emma, they cannot score goals. Before we dive into all of that, we do want to let you know that this episode's brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, Emma, I don't know whether you're Thelma or Louise here, but we are those people, and I feel like you and I are in a convertible staring at a canyon because the Nashville Predators were on a 4-game win streak, you all. It's like we were dating Brad Pitt, and then it all goes to pot in a weekend. And the Nashville Predators dropped 2 games. Of course, they lost the first game against the Anaheim Ducks by a score of 2-1. Lost in overtime to the LA Kings by a barn-burning score of 1-0, friends. There was hockey that was played this weekend by the Nashville Predators. Emma, let's just combine this weekend back to back. If you had to describe these performances in one word or more, how would you describe what you saw this weekend?
Ugh.
I don't know how to spell it, but yes.
It's just like 2, again, very different losses. Like the Anaheim game, Nashville was putting pressure on them. They were out shooting them for most of the game, I think. And then, but again, just couldn't capitalize. And then against LA, the Predators actually played defense, which is something they also haven't done all year. And it's like, wow, great. But where's the offense? And there wasn't any, literally at all from Predators at all. They get to overtime, obviously lose 1-0, but again, it's like, okay, so we actually had a solid defensive effort for once.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this so many times about, why can't this team score goals? But also, like, in theory, the best defense should be a good offense. So it's like, I think the poor defensive play of this team wouldn't be as bad, or like it wouldn't feel as bad if the team was actually scoring. But they're not. And it's so frustrating because it was like, how, and this is it's one of those things that I was talking about on Friday's episode when we were previewing the weekend. When I was talking about the Kings, I was like, they don't have a lot of offensive weapons, so you can shut them down pretty easily. And it's like, well, they did that, but like, guys, go score some goals. It's just it is so frustrating and deflating, and just like this team keeps finding ways to lose.
Yeah.
And it like, even when it went to overtime against LA, I'm like, this is going to be the most annoying, useless, frustrating overtime point ever. Like, who cares? Why?
Ever.
Like, sure. I don't know. It's just
Do we have to
let this
play it
end.
out? Do we
Yeah,
have
I'm
to?
like, we all know how this is gonna end. Like, let's just like, let's just get there.
Yeah.
But oh lordy, it was yeah, hockey was played. Hockey was
Yep.
played.
It's a weekend of hockey, you all.
Mhm,
Yeah, you
mhm.
touched on this. My one word is actually one word, which never happens, you all. And it's not about food, which also never happens. But my one word is defense. But this time, not without the question mark at the end. Because, like you said, we saw this team put together a solid defensive effort. And you have to remember, and I know it's hard to even, because this season has us all so discombobulated, it's hard to remember the days when we knew and remembered players like Roman Yossi and Jeremy Lauzon exist. But Nashville is having to do it without those guys. And so I do want to shout that out because we have been begging this team to play defense in front of the goaltenders and to stop teams from scoring. And they did that. But it was like two things can be true at the same time. You can play good defense and play offense as well. Now, there was one goal scored this weekend. Let's give a shout out to Jakub Vrana. I'm never going to get his name right. Why can't I never get this name
You
right?
nailed it. You nailed it. It was perfect. Yeah.
Vrana. I always have to think it through. He scored a power play goal kind of from the point. What is interesting, though, is if you really look at this goal, did Nashville score a goal or did Dostal allow a goal? Because bless his heart, he had it in the glove. I think he was scooping it with some flair, which look, flair points for goaltenders here for, and it kind of flew out of his glove, plopped on the ground, and then slid through the 5-hole.
If any of you are regular listeners, you remember last week's episode when I had started my day by spilling coffee all over everything. That is literally what happened. It's like
Yes.
it just left his hand. Like the coffee just left my hand. Like I didn't bump it. I didn't do anything. Like it just yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where it's like inexplicable. It's like, okay, I mean, we'll take it, but also if you score one goal, well, first of all, if you score one goal in an entire weekend of 2 games, then that's already not good.
Red
But if
flag.
that one goal is scored by the guy that you picked up on waivers in the middle of the season,
Yeah. High five.
like good for him and no disrespect, but like guys, what are we doing?
What are we doing here? Great defensive performance against the LA Kings. They held LA to just 6 shots on goal in the first 40 minutes. And then they were like, that was rude. Here, take 12 chances in the third period and try to even up shots on goal. I thought Ananen had a good game. Those games are really tough when you only see 6 shots on goal in 40 minutes. Those are tough games for goaltenders. And so I do want to shout out Justus Ananen for playing as well as he did in a situation that is really difficult. But
I was thinking
still,
that too. Like those games are the hardest for goalies. It's not the ones where you're facing a ton of shots. It's the one where you're facing 6 in 40 minutes.
yeah.
And I put this on Twitter too, but had to shout out for any Chapel Roan fans out there. It was an on and an omenon that
Oh,
performance. So yes, it was good. He was great. Defensive play was great, but we can't, we can't have nice things ever.
no.
It's got to be like we can't have everything going at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah. I want to read one of the comments from one of our insiders, Catalina. Her one word to sum up both games is inconsistencies. It starts in the middle of the second period of the Ducks game with the line blender, where we see Bruno's lack of patience on display again when all the lines were doing really well. The second reason for the word is the fact that we are seeing the inconsistencies between the messages that Trotz is putting out there. We want to see these young players elevated and play more minutes, and what Bruno is putting out there, moving Evangelista down the lineup and eventually scratching him. Friends, There is a good reason why Emma's text should not be subpoenaed, because I was blowing up her phone ahead of the game against LA, because not only was Luke Evangelista healthy scratched, so was Spencer Stastny. And this is where I have to say, I confess that that was a little bit of my own personal hockey sunburn. I get that Barry Trotz wants to look at Vrana and Osterley. Vrana. See, I do it wrong every time. Vrana and Osterley. He wants to look at Michael Bunting, getting Zachary LaRue back in there. But for the love, the minute I see Spencer Stastny scratched, heaven help you if Mark Delgaiso had not played in that game, and Luke Evangelista popped out of the top 6 in the first game and then healthy scratched in this game. I know that people want to scream about, like, we need to tank or commit to a rebuild, but what we really need to be screaming is commit to the youth. Coach him out of it. Did Evangelista start to sort of fall off in the last game or two? Yeah, coach him out of it. Coach him out of it. That's roughly translated what Emma's cell phone said.
Yeah, it is so frustrating to watch, man. Like, and it was so funny because it was like, like you said, first popped him out of the top 6 with the line blender against Anaheim, and then scratch him in the next game. I'm like, does Bruno think that if he does this like incrementally that we won't notice that he's doing it? Like, we'll do it gradually and then no one will be able to tell. Like, no, it is so frustrating. So frustrating. And like, I just don't, it doesn't make sense to me. It would be one thing if this team was in a playoff spot right now. I'd be like, okay, I don't necessarily agree with it all the time, but I get it. Like, I get why every game is really important right now. You need to, now of all times,
What are we?
what are we doing? They are not playing for a damn thing anymore. They are out of the playoffs. They're not like, we're not tanking for a draft pick, anybody, because once again, this is not the NFL and it doesn't work that way. And I just don't like, of all the times, this is like your free gift at this point to be like, hey, here's 20 games where you can do whatever the hell you want because nothing matters.
It hurts nothing. It hurts nothing except the development of the youth when you do the thing you're doing.
If he is scratched again, like if he's scratched for a second game,
we ride at dawn.
Anne and I are at 501 Broadway with our torches and pitchforks.
That's right. Really rough. Yeah. Really
we'll
rough.
never be in the locker room again, but it might be worth it.
It might be. Coming up, there were 2 players back in the lineup that we want to take a look at their performances. Michael Bunting, sans appendix, made his debut with the Nashville Predators, and Zachary LaRue returned to the lineup. We'll talk about what we saw from these 2 spicy Preds coming up. Today's episode sponsored by Factor Meals. Eating healthy does not have to be complicated. With Factor Meals, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor Meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that is calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. I know Factor Meals have worked really, really well for my son and daughter-in-law, new baby, full-time student, full-time working. Factor Meals have been their go-to. They love them. They're easy, no prep, easy cleanup. And here's the thing, Factor goes well beyond just meals. They offer things like smoothies, breakfasts, and snacks, and you always will have something nutritious ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast and use code Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Factor Podcast at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, Emma, we have just dipped our toe in the water of bemoaning Luke Evangelista and Spencer Stasny healthy scratched. That's our face. But we are going to talk about two players who did get back into the lineup. First of all, let's talk about Michael Bunting, who showed up and played as advertised. This was really delightful. First of all, you could tell Michael Bunting was ready to play some hockey. You know, he wants to make his debut for this new team. He has missed these games, of course, recovering from an appendectomy. You could tell that he was just chomping at the bit to get in there. And get in there he did. What did you think of what we saw from Bunting in these two games?
Well, you said as advertised. He plays with that grit, with that edge. He wasn't afraid to mix it up. He was you could tell he was getting to the net. He only had, I think, 3 shots on goal between the 2 games. But you could just tell that he was getting to those greasy areas that we talk about. He was driving to the net, and obviously didn't always result in a shot or a shot attempt, but still, like, he was actually going to the places and doing the things that you need to do to create offense that this team has not been doing. So that was good to see. I thought he was a good skater. I think that his style fits well with the team. And yeah, kind of what we were saying before, like Kiefer Sherwood with a little more upside.
Right. As I watched him play, it very much reminded me of like Cole Smith with offensive upside. You know, we've talked about Kiefer Sherwood, but it's that same sort of last year we called it the identity line. Michael Bunting plays with that identity, but because he gets to the hard areas, because Michael Bunting knows, friends, that the slot is not lava and he goes there, you can see where the offensive upside can come from a player like that. I did want to ask you, Emma, I thought this is just one of those questions, not maybe specifically about Bunting, but in general. This is somebody who has been on 5 teams in 7 seasons. Is there anything about that that is a red flag to you, or do you just feel like it's fit?
Uh,
Yeah.
eh.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is where I'm at this year with everything. Like I've said, is I don't know. Like, I don't know what to think about anything anymore. Like, and this is my job to. I'm out of answers at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to me, you know, I was kind of pondering that, and it's like, okay, is it fit with the right team? Is it that he is a role player and certain teams have that role filled? And then I think, does Nashville have that role filled? Well, they have grit and some sandpaper, but do they have that offensive upside?
Well, I think
They
too,
don't
it's
have any
about
offensive upside right now anyway. I mean, like, let's just be clear.
and I think too, it's about like you can have the right pieces, but you can be not employing them correctly. Like, again, I mean, I don't know. It would be like, and this has obviously never happened, but this is just an extreme example. But like, if you put Philip Forsberg on your 4th line, that is not using him like to the best of, to get his full potential. So I think it's about knowing what guys bring, like what they can do versus what they are kind of pigeonholed into doing. So yeah, but honestly, like you said, with this team, I don't even know. Sure.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch Bunting going forward because I see where he and Luke Evangelista are a little different stylistically, but that does not necessarily mean you don't need both. You know, I'm just throwing it out there. We also saw the return of Zach LaRue, finally back. Look, here's what's real for me. There is just a level of joy that I have when Zach LaRue plays hockey. Like, he just has to show up, and I just am thrilled to have him back. Again, you know, you've got the guy with the grit, you've got the guy that will mix it up with Zach LaRue. I do think Zach LaRue has a high offensive upside. We just have not seen it yet. Zach LaRue, top 6 guy for you? Middle 6 guy for you long term? And again, who the hell knows? But let's just throw it out there,
Exactly.
Emma.
Well, but that's it. I mean, what? He was a top 6 guy in Milwaukee,
Mhm.
easily. Was
Easily.
one of their top scorers consistently. You get him up to here, and now look, I don't really have any issue with him not being plugged into a top 6 role immediately upon reaching the NHL. I don't take issue with that. But the fact that he's like never really, not with consistency, there's that word again, not with consistency, been in a role like that. It's like he might be like, maybe, I don't know. Like we can't really tell, because again, when even the quote unquote like top 6 locks are not scoring goals, that's when you're like, who the hell knows? I don't
Right.
know.
Right. It is hard to know. The scoring is something that I don't think we saw coming July 2nd. I don't think anybody looked at this roster July 2nd and said, you know what's going to trip up the Nashville Predators? Goal scoring. Coming up, we are going to talk about what it is that keeps this team from scoring goals. We're going to try to pin it down, y'all. It's like nailing jello to a wall. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I personally am a fan of the no shells variety. It's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I am sitting here working at my desk or in my car on the way to Bridgestone Arena, or I just hit that point in the day where I know, ooh, I am going to need to get some protein in me. It is the easiest and best go to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, they have a great in shell option. It's a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. These days, it just makes good sense to use a finance app. And now, managing money together as a couple with your partner, it's smoother than ever with Monarch Money. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So here is what we know for sure. Emma and I have said, look, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know. This year is a mystery wrapped up in enigma, surrounded by a Rubik's Cube that doesn't have all the stickers on it, covered up in a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. And that's just what's real. But one thing we know, Nashville cannot score goals. I did a little goal scoring math for us, Emma, and the math ain't mathin'. So in the offseason, you look at, we lost Kiefer Sherwood, Ryan McDonough, Tyson Berry, Jason Zucker rhymes with Hooker, Anthony Beauvillier. They combined last season for about 20 goals. We added Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. 95 combined goals from the previous season with just those 3. So should have netted just in the ballpark of maybe 75 goals this season. And let's just say they needed time to adjust. And let's just say, you know what? Maybe we could just get 50 more goals than we had last season with these guys. Last season, Nashville scored 266 goals. This season, Nashville has scored 170 goals, minus 96 goals. They have scored 96 fewer goals this season. Now, there are 15 games remaining, so you're saying there's a chance. If Nashville averages 6.4 goals per game in these last 15 games, right back where we were last season, friends. So you're saying there's a chance.
Don't call it a comeback.
We've been here for years, baby.
Oh,
Nashville cannot score goals. So it's like, what is the deal? Some of it, and I know nobody wants to hear this, but we have to acknowledge what's real. Some of it is just crappy puck luck. The Predators have hit a lot of posts. They are 14th in the league in expected goals for at 5-on-5 this season. So 14th in like quality of shots versus, position and all that stuff. 14th. They are 31st in actual goals scored at 5-on-5. So it's not that they're generating the second worst chances in the league. It's that they are not finishing those. What else is contributing to this, Emma? Like if you could kind of big picture, Nashville's having trouble scoring goals. Players like Stamkos, Forsberg, they're having trouble scoring goals. What is the hitch in that giddy up?
well, first, I think to your point, puck luck has absolutely been part of it. It's not like 70 goals worth part of it, but like it is certainly like there's been some of that. And I get it. It's not an excuse, doesn't explain away like anything that we've dealt with this year, but that is part of it. I think too, we talk about guys needing the time to adjust to the system. There's a difference though, I think, between getting like, if getting like Jacob Vrana to adjust to the system versus getting a Steven Stamkos to adjust to the system. One of those guys you're going to be relying upon much more heavily to drive your offense and like be your offense. And so it's like, yes, the guys, they're taking time. They just need time. And it's like, okay, well, when those guys are where like 70 of your goals are supposed to come from, then like, it makes a difference there. Then I think just, and this is something that goes back to, yes, in the off season when Barry Trotz went out, made all those moves, no one was looking at this team and saying, well, who's going to score the goals? Where are the goals going to come from?
Right.
Like, that's very clear. But what was a little bit of a question mark was the strength of the defense. Like, for a team that historically has been very deep defensively. And now it's like, okay, well, you've got Roman Yossi and Brady Shea, which of course did not work out on the top pairing. Then you have Lozon and Carrier. Okay. But then even then, it's like Shen was a bit of a liability. You had like kind of a question mark. Spencer Stastny ended up not, showing up until December. And so there's a lot of moving parts on the back end. And I do think that like in theory, in a vacuum, yes, one should not affect the other, but that's not how this works. Like, obviously, I think and we've seen this so many times this year where this team gives up a goal or gives up a chance or whatever it is, how quickly the wind just gets let out of their sails. And that's a whole other problem in itself, the fact that that's happening so much. But I mean, when you're that poor defensively, it does a lot for you. Like it affects your mental approach. It affects a lot of things. And so I think that, again, like that's just kind of my grasping at straws here at this point. But it's like, I wish that there was an easy explanation as to why this team can't score goals. I think if you looked at the roster from last year and asked why can't they score goals, I'd be like, well,
It makes more sense last year
Yeah.
with last year's roster. That's a question you would have asked.
Yeah. But it would have been like, okay, well, I kind of get it, you
Mhm.
know? But now it's like it makes no sense.
Yeah. I
No
think you
sense.
hit on something that's really important that we probably don't talk about enough, and that is the mental component of this. You know, we talked about Steven Stamkos was on this career-long 13-game pointless streak. There is a huge mental toll when you have been the guy for your team. I mean, you are the face of the franchise. You are the go-to guy. You are the guy who makes the goal in the big moments. You know, and I'm certainly not saying that Tampa Bay doesn't have other players who can do that as well, but that's just a part of who Steven Stamkos is. And all of the sudden, you are not contributing offensively. It's not even you're not scoring goals, you're not getting assists.
Well, what's interesting too is like for him, career long streak without a point. Prior to that, I want to say he had like 20 points in 19 games or 19 points in 20 games, something like that. So
Mhm.
it's been like serious peaks and valleys for him all season. And that is got to, like, again, inconsistency. It's the name of the game for this entire team. You're seeing it everywhere.
Philip Forsberg, exact same thing you're talking about, you know, went
Yep.
from what 48 goals last season to this season, just periods of inconsistency, nothing happening, nothing doing, invisible. And then he goes on this streak where, you know, he's scoring all these goals and then kind of back. There is something fundamentally wrong when you have a team with the offensive talent that Nashville does. And I know you've got the people who are like, oh, Steven Stamkos is old and he's nothing without Kuznetsov and and, you know, all that stuff. Look, say what you want. There's not a team in this league that wouldn't be like, yeah, Steven Stamkos would help us score more goals. There's not a team in the league who wouldn't say that. So there is something fundamentally not working. Coaching and system, that's something that has to be a part of it. You know, line mates, that has to be a part of it. Maybe there is not the right pieces for the team. All of that, though, whatever this puzzle is when you unpack it, the Predators have to address it this offseason. You cannot have another season with a roster with the core that you will have next season and have them not score like this. Simply cannot have it.
Inexcusable if it happens again.
Yeah. Inexcusable. And that's going to be part of Barry Trotz's challenge in the offseason. Later on this week, we are actually going to have a two-parter. It is a mailbag episode. So if you have specific questions about goal scorers or about the roster or offseason moves that Barry Trotz could make, drop them in the comments. We will add them to our list and try to tackle that. While Emma and I say we have no idea what is happening around here with these Nashville Predators team, we're going to put together some information and give you some insight. I don't think it's going to make you feel a lot better, friends, but we're going to do it for you anyway because that's who we are as people. That's what we
It's just
do.
what we do. It's what we do.
It's what we do. Emma, before we log off on today's episode, will you let everyone know where they can find you and all the other stuff that you do?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen. That's on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media and K_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Monday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow. Got to preview a game. Preds back home tomorrow. Can they score some goals? Well, we'll see. We'll preview that game tomorrow. We'll see you then.